Cannabis Business Minds, we train and mentor professionals, entrepreneurs, and aspiring entrepreneurs on how to confidently find their place in the legal cannabis and hemp industries. Come on and join us at cannabisbusinessminds.com. On this last episode with Paula, we are going to dive deep into really what entrepreneurs want to be thinking about when it comes to taxes, the fastest way that you can get into trouble as an entrepreneur, and also tips on how you can really avoid debt and bankruptcy in the cannabis industry and really understanding it from a legal perspective. So something that's not really discussed, but super important to understand. So make sure that you get your pad of paper, your notebook, your pen, and you get ready to learn a ton. Well, then I was just, even for myself, well, and then this is the big thing that I really want to kind of rewrite for entrepreneurs is there was so much glory about like, oh, startup culture, not being able to feed yourself, not being able to blah, 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 right? But your whole goal as a business is to earn a profit. Of course, for some businesses, it takes longer to generate your profit. But for service-based entrepreneurs, it's relatively easy. No one ever told me, and even as a CPA, like you want to focus, always continue to build your wealth. Like obviously your business is an asset, but continue to invest in a 401k, set up your own self-directed 401k. Like I didn't learn this as a CPA until recently. And I'm just curious because I think you do a lot more. I mean, I don't do taxes. I'm sure you do a lot more taxes and talk to a lot more business owners about this. Are those things even in their mind? Or are they just like in that survival mode of their business and not thinking about wealth building?
No, you raise a valid point, and that is the idea that it's more important to step up into a better apartment or a better house if you're in the suburbs, drive a newer car rather than put that money into a 401k. And is that survival or is that conspicuous consumption? One or the other, but it's there, and it's very much a part of, retirement is really, because people don't want to look at mortality, they don't want to look at retirement. And so it's a very uncomfortable discussion.
Yeah.
You say, money is emotional. I want to circle back to cannabis and talk about the entrepreneur who has been gray market or, the classic legacy dealer. And many people, like I've got one guy who's supporting 3 households. So when I said to him, can't you just wait for the license? This is like a year and a half ago. Can't you wait for the license? And he said, no, I can't, because this is what I do for a living. And I support 3 households and I have 40 employees, and I can't just tell them, guess what? We're going to wait for a license. No money for you till that happens. Thank God he didn't, because it's taken too long. But the perception in that conversation was, well, once we get my personal income taxes filed, that's going to take care of this letter that I got about sales tax, right?
No, it's not.
So what's new for a lot of entrepreneurs is the idea that tax has different buckets. The other thing, the most basic one that I get outside of the cannabis space is, I got this letter and the IRS says I owe them tons of money. Well, a couple of years ago, I would have gone onto the IRS site, pulled the transcript, tried to find what is it that, but wait, this person thinks they got a letter from the IRS. It's from New York State. Did you not read the letter? And, and so that idea that you get taxed by, and in New York City, you get a New York City tax, you get New York State tax, and you get federal tax. Right? You no longer have to file a New York City tax return unless you have a business. So now let's put it back into the cannabis space. What's new for a lot of entrepreneurs, including those who are going into the licensed market, are these different buckets of taxes that we have. So we have the cannabis tax, we have sales tax, we have payroll tax. Then you've got the quarterly tax returns that have to be filed, or in some cases, the monthly tax returns. Like if your sales tax revenue is at a certain level, you need a monthly sales tax return. And of course you need CPAs or tax professionals to do that work. And so what do you mean I need to replenish my retainer with you? Well, I've done all this work. I had to do your monthly sales tax return. So then you back that up with somebody will come to me and say, well, I know that sales tax is due, but I have these deductions I need to send to you. No, the sales
they're not equal.
Negotiating. And then there's another guy, another gray market person who says, oh yes, I've been collecting the sales tax, but he's not
remitting it. Yeah.
That is the fastest way to get into trouble, because that gets into trust. It's a trust fund basically that you have taken the money from the consumer. You're holding it for the government.
Yeah.
You've got to turn it over.
Is New York doing anything, if we just like keep the lens of like cannabis business, like free tax workshops or like free boot camps or anything like that to actually educate these businesses? Because I remember reading the stat about generally, not even cannabis, but a lot of business owners they don't have a business degree. So, how do you learn that? You either have to work with a professional that explains it to you, or sometimes a lot of times they don't even work with professionals.
How much of this granular information is really even taught in business schools?
I could tell you not a lot, because my major was accounting and business. And I had one very complicated tax course, but nothing about, if you want to be an entrepreneur, here's self-employment. This is what you could do maybe to offset self-employment, investing in your 401k or some form of, like deducting your business expenses. No, nobody taught me any of that stuff. It wasn't until I actually started my own business that I started learning about these things, because I never, in my corporate career, I never had to do taxes, or I didn't work with small businesses. I worked with large enterprises. And so and I was talking to another CPA about this, and she never even learned about wealth building or even like maxing out your 401k. Like, it's just, I think the educational system from public education to then if you actually go on to like university or some secondary education is lacking. And so then the question is, then when people come to start their own business because they had a great idea, they're solving a problem, how do you provide them a quick roadmap so they don't get in trouble? They don't have that big tax bill.
So I mentioned the New York Consortium of Cannabis Accountants that Allison Kirchhofer and I have founded. And our mission is the social equity applicant in particular, in order to raise awareness. And so we will appear on panel discussions. We will hold workshops. We've reached out to various legislators to offer these boot camps. Now, there are boot camps going on for the currently provisionally licensed card applicants, and they've been very closed door sessions. So I think that what I'm hearing is that much of it is around point of sale activity, and how does that software work? What does your security system look like? It really isn't getting in. And I think it's because the lawmakers and regulators themselves don't understand these things. As you say, you really don't get it until you're the one who's being held personally liable for those taxes.
Yeah. Yeah. Before we wrap up, I know you also work on bankruptcy. Like, that's one of your other things. Can you give like just a lowdown on like cannabis, federal illegality, bankruptcy? How does that all really play into itself?
Well, it's very interesting. As long as I remember, it was during COVID, because it was one of the first remote 341 meetings. That's the meeting that you have with the trustee if you file personal bankruptcy.
Okay.
And it wasn't my client. It was a client that was on the call, because it's like court on the phone. So you hear everybody's personal business, which is really kind of startling. But there was a CBD business that was going out of business, and the court could not take the case. They had to dismiss the case because the United States trustee ultimately it's the Department of Justice that takes possession of your assets, and the Department of Justice declined it because they didn't understand at that point. Even this would have been early 2021. They did not understand that CBD was federally legal. So now back that into there have been some landmark cases. Actually, there was a shop, I want to say it was in Maine, but maybe I'm incorrect on the location, but they were a garden supply shop that pivoted to cater to the cannabis market, home grown activity. They ultimately got into business trouble and wanted to file bankruptcy. the bankruptcy court rejected them because they were so ancillary, so connected to all of their marketing had been to home. And so the bankruptcy court said no. I have heard, and I need to do the research, I have heard that recently there has been a little bit of light cracking on that issue in California, which is interesting because bankruptcy is federal, but then ultimately you have to deal with each attorney general or each United States attorney or each. So there is going to be some regional differentiation. In New York, I would be shocked if we could get a bankruptcy case through for a cannabis business of any sort.
Because it has to go through the state and the federal.
It really doesn't go through the state at all. It's really quite federal. Yeah.
It's just quite federal, but it has to be a state attorney, even if it's a federal attorney.
Right.
Okay.
So like for me to practice bankruptcy, I not only have to be a New York attorney, but I have to be admitted to each of the federal districts in New York. There are 4 of them. And that's a separate application process. And then, so you file the case. It's a lot like filing a tax return. And then you are appointed a local trustee, but then ultimately the United States Department of Justice has a trustee, United States trustee, who is reviewing all of the applications or all of the petitions, I should say. And there will be questions that will be raised. And it's, it could be that how did this person even qualify for this house if their income was so low? Was there some element of fraud in getting that to begin with? And so in the cannabis space, I think it would get caught very quickly after that petition was filed, especially if your shop was Lower East Side Cannabis Company. If you had cannabis in your name, it's going to get flagged right away. And then your case would simply get dismissed. And then you're right back where you started, which is that you have a pile of debt, not enough assets, not enough income. And so you are forced to either negotiate that debt and restructure that debt. Or if your creditors are not willing to do that, then you're forced to sell all of your assets and simply go out of business. Wow.
Yeah, there's a lot. I was thinking in my mind, I was like, we could have had a whole conversation about bankruptcy because it's, again, nobody teaches you this stuff. Like nobody teaches you. And it's like one of those things that you don't want to think about, but it prepares you just so you can understand things to help you make better decisions in your today, if you knew what could happen.
Well, it's interesting because big companies don't call it bankruptcy. They call it restructuring. And we all think, oh, great, they restructured.
Oh, God, you're so right.
For some companies, it's part of their life cycle. Every 7 or 8 years, they file bankruptcy, but they call it corporate restructuring.
Wow. Paula, what's one piece of advice that you would give somebody that is just getting started in the cannabis industry?
Work with a professional so that you can walk through these various levels of taxation.
What is one thing you wish you had known when you started to get into the industry?
I wish I would have had a crystal ball to know how long it was going to take us from March 31st, 2021 till the time when we have a viable licensed market. We still don't know the end date on that.
Yeah. No, I hear you. I hear you on that. And where do you want to be in the next 12 months? You professionally?
Oh, professionally, I would love to still be servicing my unlicensed shops and getting them into compliance. I would like to bring on a network of professionals, and I am building that out. In fact, I could say that I have a network of professionals that if I need help or if I'm bringing on interns this week to help work through some of the work that could be taught and repeated. And I hate to say grunt work because it's all very important work, but it's work that can be taught and repeated, and that allows me time to go out and educate and to appear at panels and to talk to the city council. Because of course, for every minute that I'm doing that, and not right now because it's 7 a.m. or now it's getting on 8 a.m., but When I take time to go out and educate or appear on a panel discussion, of course, that is time away from client work. And so I need the wheels to be turning on the client work that's paid work in order to then go out and teach.
Absolutely. And then where can people find you?
Oh, people can find me at two different places. One is paulacollinslaw.com. Another place that is dedicated to the unlicensed market is mortonstreetgroup.com, MORTON streetgroup.com.
Perfect. And I'll put it in the podcast as well. Thank you so much for sharing all of your expertise.
Thank you. This was delightful. I'm so glad to meet you.
Yes, you too. Thanks so much for listening to this week's show. Please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And if you enjoyed this, leave us a 5-star review. Make sure that you share this episode on your social media and tag us in the Instagram stories. You can find us wherever you go on social media. Just look up Cannabis Business Minds. Have an idea for the show or something that you want to talk about? Shoot us an email at podcast@cannabisbusinessminds.com.